Seanchaí Corner sees the renowned author, storyteller, lecturer and broadcaster Eddie Lenihan regaling us with a memorable story from his extensive collection of old Irish tales and fables. And in our latest instalment of Seanchaí Corner, Eddie tells us about St Brigid and the start of spring.
St Brigid is a much misunderstood woman. A woman, of course, that we know very little about in reality. And that's the reason why she has been made somebody that everybody can take a little piece of. As you saw in the recent celebrations, there was a cavorting and ballet dancing and this person saying that she was this to me and that. But St Brigid really is the patron saint of agriculture, cattle, spring. Of course, she's the patron saint of growth, spring, the coming of a new year, and farming, fishing. Again, people's livelihoods. Now, her father was Dufach, and there's a funny story about her and her father. She was a very generous young girl, and she had her father and mother plagued. She had everything they had given away. She was a nuisance. And they wondered, she'll give away the house, she'll give away the door, and we'll be robbed. What'll we do with her? Now, her mother, of course, like all mothers, would forgive their daughter anything. And now, of course, the mothers in Ireland would forgive their sons anything. Just changed all around. But the father said, no, we'll have to do something about this. And he got the idea. I'll take her to the king of Leinster, and maybe he might be able to teach her something, manners. And he did. He took her to the king of Leinster, and at that time, the King of Leinster was Lera. Now, Lera, a decent man, but old-fashioned. And when Dufach brought the daughter in his chariot, of course, and it was evening time. Now, they were having their feast inside, their supper, I suppose, but of course the king's supper was always a feast, and there was no weapons allowed at any feast that time, and for obvious reasons, because when there'd be too much drink taken, well, fellas might get out of order and fights might develop and rowdyism. So you had to leave your weapons at the door. And the same thing applied to Brigid's father. He left his fine, expensive sword and his dagger. There'd be weapons at the table, knives without too much edge at the table. Left his chariot outside, there'd be more servants for that. They went in and were welcomed, especially the young girl, because King Lera had a young daughter too. And she was delighted to see the other girl. They could be doing what they wanted to while this feast was going on. They had no interest in that kind of fetch to see fellas making pigs of themselves, and maybe some of the women also. Anyway, off they went. But while they were playing, I suppose you'd call it, a leper came to the gate outside. It wasn't dark yet, because there was a place locally called Leper's Town. Lepers, you see, were kept strictly away from people. And by the way, it's there yet, Leopard's Town, where the races are kept today, where the races are held today. Leopard's Town is called today, but that in those days was called Leper's Town. Now, one of those poor lepers came to the gate, and the poor man, with his hands hanging to him, begging for alms, please, sir, or something. And of course the servants ran. They didn't want. You could be infected. But Brigid, she saw him. She didn't run. The kind of girl she was, charitable. And like I said, she'd give away anything. And she said, I have nothing to give you, sir. Sir, she called him. But she looked around. She could have given away the chariot, but she didn't. What did she give him? Only her father's fine sword. Father, And, of course, the king's daughter saw this and was delighted, ran in and told the people inside what had happened. And the father jumped up. What are you after doing, Gerald? What, my sword? What? No, and the king? King Lara was most impressed and said, "You have a wonderful daughter. That is the best thing I have ever seen. Leave her here with me. Leave her here with me. She's more than welcome." Norfolk, he was delighted in a way. He didn't like to lose his sword, but maybe this might teach his daughter a lesson to serve in this man's house for a while. He went home delighted in his chariot. Without his sword, he could get another sword. Swords came cheaply. What? Even though it was his grandfather's heirloom and all that, but still, he explained to his wife. I'm not so sure that she was so pleased, but anyway, Bridget settled into the new house, and they loved her. She was a great girl, but she had to work her way, like I told you. King Lyra, he was an old-fashioned man, and he gave her a job to do. A job, what was it? Only minding the cattle, like a servant girl. She didn't mind that. The cattle, they seemed to like her. And the cows and the hens and the rest, they seemed to follow her around, especially the cattle. And the king said, "Right, you mind the cattle." And the cattle, they used to follow her round and round and round to the fields. She didn't have to drive them like another servant would. They followed her. And this particular day in the month of November, cold, wet day, cold, she was out along the road. Well, there wasn't a road there that time. I suppose you'd call it a boreen. And you know where the word boreen comes from? Bohareen. A cow track. Cow in Irish. A bohareen. She was out a few miles from the king's fort, and her favourite white cow was with her. And it started to rain, and the chief of that place, he was out on a hunt with his men, and he came on her, and he was looking at her. She was talking to the cow, and the cow seemed to be listening to her, nodding its head, as if they were having a conversation. And the king there above on his horse and his men, watching this strange sight. And eventually the king said, "Tell me," he said to the girl, what's going on here?" And she said, "Nothing, we're just having our conversation as usual." He was most impressed. And he says, tell me, he said, "Take off your cloak there to have a good look at you." She did. And he said, "That cloak that you're wearing, it was fairly dripping with water now. Put it down there on the ground and tell me how much space would that cover if we put it down." "Oh, it should cover a fair bit of ground," she said. And she put it down on the ground. And the cloak started to spread and spread and spread and spread out and out and out, faster and faster and faster. And the Lord was looking at this. And he said, "Lolly God Almighty, I won't have a bit of land left if this continues. What'll I do?" And just then, this old kyloch of a hag of a woman came on the way and said, "There'll never again be a bit of rent paid in the land of Ireland. Buys. And the minute she spoke, the cloak stopped. But it didn't matter. That's the Curragh of Kildare to this very day. And there is no rent paid on the Curragh of Kildare, except on one small bit of it. The army barracks, which the British government, of course, took. You couldn't beat the British government, or the Irish government that took it over from them. The Irish government isn't too much better than the British government. And that's the story of the Curragh of Kildare and how it came to be.